Thank you for interviewing me. I'm speaking with Teresa Smallwood. And can you tell me your title at Vanderbilt?
hmm I am the Associate Director of the Public Theology and Racial Justice Collaborative at Vanderbilt.
Thank you. And
Mhm.
for everybody that follows me, I got on my Black seminarian t-shirt. So I'm in seminary at ITC, the Interdenominational Theological Center, and I'm on the religious education track. And my concentration is public spaces. So it goes hand in hand with what you're doing at Vanderbilt University. Um, and to prepare for the interview, I, the name Vanderbilt, of course, well, a lot of people, when they think of Vanderbilt, they might think of Gloria Vanderbilt with the jeans and that whole scandal. But the school actually um, began with an in-law of Commodore Vanderbilt, right? The the railroad magnate. And the interesting thing to me was even the beginning history of Vanderbilt University had a, a peculiar crossroads with race because Commodore Vanderbilt supported the Union Army during the Civil War. Like he gave millions of dollars, or what would amount to now as millions of dollars, to the Union cause to defeat slavery. So for him to fund the effort of a Methodist bishop, and if you're familiar, well, for those of you who are not familiar with the history of the Southern Methodist Church, they were really big, Southern Methodists were, on slavery. Like they broke away from the main Methodist church in support of slavery. There was this big schism in the Methodist denomination. So that was interesting to me that Commodore would fund Vanderbilt. And what was also interesting was moving forward, Vanderbilt seems to be a progressive place, especially to be located in Nashville, Tennessee, because I also read in your history that in 2016, you paid the daughter of, and when I say you, I'm talking about the university, paid the daughters of the Confederate monies that they had, that you paid them back monies that they had donated to the university to remove the Confederacy from the campus. I just thought that that was fascinating, especially in Nashville.
Mm.
So I know I started off with a lot, but it made me think about the intersection of public spaces and religion, because just knowing that history, it's very intertwined there.
Mhm. As it is with a number of places. And you've highlighted some interesting points. Of course, Vanderbilt, like most places that you see making their confessionals and divesting themselves of their historical alignment with supremacist thought and supremacist ideology, did not come about that because they were so self-inflating. They came about that because there was resistance narrative being raised that said, this is not tenable, we cannot stand for this. And I guess I offer that to say that Frederick Douglass is right. Power concedes nothing without a fight. There is, however, I believe, a real intentional ethos at this present moment to be sure that we live into a much more liberative ethos around equality and diversity. And that seems to be happening across the board in many higher education venues. One of the things that perhaps you did not know, or you may know, is that the Divinity School went through a great deal of turmoil around the civil rights era pertaining to James Lawson, who was in his own right one of the architects of much of the movement around nonviolent resistance. And James Lawson was a student at the Divinity School. So you might Google the Lawson Affair, and that will give you an even more flavored understanding of just how progression in this institution came about as a result of resistance narratives. The bottom line is we do have, in this present moment, an institution that is sensitive, an institution that can be reasoned with, and an institution that I believe would probably be a stalwart when it comes to what the southern region of America sees, particularly as we see how things are unfolding in the landscape of diversity around the country. I mean, it's not enough for me to think about 70 million people voting for Donald Trump. You have to understand where the historical antecedents are. And while there were people who were aligned in various and sundry ways during the time that abolition was in its heyday, a lot of those attitudes and ideas about who belongs and who does not have grown up in people who had parents and grandparents and great grandparents who were on either side of that divide.
Right.
And we see that happening even in this moment. The greatest example I have is Jefferson Beauregard Sessions as the top cop in America, starting out with the administration of Donald Trump. You have to know, if you know any history at all, that Jefferson Davis was a Confederate bar none, and General Beauregard led the fight at Fort Sumter against the Union.
I was gonna like every time I hear his name, there is no way that you could like he is wrapped up in he is emblematic, he is like he is the Confederacy, just in whom his name honors. And it's the same with the Republican Party. The history is so the South, following the Civil War, did such a wonderful job of skewing that history, where we weren't and people will argue you. I mean, they are resolute in the opinion that the Civil War was not about slavery. It was about states' rights, and following that, the Southern cause and my heritage. And there is no separation from that and like you could fix it up as pretty as you want to, but there is no separation for that from sex, from the Confederacy and slavery. And when you listen to the news, even just Sessions, the response that we have for Donald Trump is the same response we had following Reconstruction. Like the fact that we have this Black president and these white Southerners, and even this whole, like here in Georgia, which is where the heart of this battle is now. I think about the campaign that led to the Atlanta race riots when Hoke Smith was running for governor, and they did all of this incendiary language in the Journal-Constitution. Well, the Atlanta Journal and the Constitution, like going back and forth, race baiting to win votes. Like I went to hear Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff and Joe Biden came today, and I just happened to be positioned right next to some Trump supporters. And it's amazing how much the needle has moved backwards. I mean, it just, amazes me, which is why I think that the work that you all do is so important, because looking at your website, like you're holding series after series addressing each of these issues and educating people like myself how to go forth and do the work.
Mhm. Exactly.
Um, and that being said, can you talk a little bit, like when I did visit your website, you guys have some amazing conferences.
Mhm.
Um, I wish I had taken this class. Well, I couldn't have taken it this year, but I'm glad that I know now, and I have family in Nashville, so coming to Nashville to me would not be a problem. But can you talk to me a little bit about some of the events that you've held just over the past year?
Oh, sure. Let me share my screen and give you a little bit of a bird's eye view. So
Okay.
this past year, we did what was called the Leadership Academy. But before that, Leadership Academy would have been our culminating of experience. But the Summer Institutes were the two events that led up to the Leadership Academy. And we were really designing this to give people an opportunity to sort of walk with us through the vision. So in the Summer Institutes from 2018 and 2019, our vision was to give people a true understanding of some of the main issues in racial justice around a public facing faith, a public facing witness. So public theology for us is very, very simply a public facing witness around how it is that people of faith should be engaged in not just fanning the flames of our faith, but being willing to be advocates for those who are oppressed. And
Right.
so, we started out talking about reclaiming our time. That was the year that our dear friend made that such a strong mantra. And so we focused our attention a lot in that first year on the issues of voter suppression, voter engagement, but also on self-care and the capacity for us to really just, you know, be the kinds of people who show up. So we looked at vexations, religion and politics in the Black community. That was Dean Towns led that. Occupational activism was Daniel Cornfield, who is a noted sociologist and he's one of the sitting professors, full professors in the sociology department here. Then we looked at immigration, sustaining tiered personhood, Jim Crow and anti-immigration laws. Carla McCanders, who was a Divinity School student, but also a full professor in the law department at Vanderbilt. And we looked at housing and urban development, the role of racist governance. That was a course co-taught by biblical scholar, Hebrew scholar, Herbert Marbury, and myself. And then we looked at public policy, racial justice, and the wealth gap. Shamika Nicole Cathy, who's a Divinity School student in the MDiv program, but has a PhD in public policy. And of course, we called upon Daniel Schaufstein, who is a full professor in the law department, to talk about the politics of division from a legal perspective. So those were the things that we focused on. And of course, we had a reading list that in the primary pieces here are Nancy McLean's piece on Democracy in Chains and Richard Rothstein's piece on The Color of Law, Forgotten History of how our government segregated America, to give people a true understanding really of exactly how we got here and how the government is complicit in that. But then as we went into the sort of Leadership Academy piece, it was the capacity for us to think about what is the main issue for today. And of course, August of 2020 presented us with a time when, this pandemic has taken us through a lot. And I really think it was prophetic that the Spirit led me to think about Harriet Washington's work done almost 10, 12 years ago, maybe even longer now, medical apartheid. But this time it's medical apartheid revisited, pandemic
Yes.
politics and priorities. And she did just a phenomenal job of helping us see and witness where we are, what we are about. At this present moment, lots and lots and lots of people are reporting that people are suspect in the Black community over this vaccine. But
My husband and I just had that conversation. Like we just had that conversation because they had a Black doctor in Nashville, actually. He might have been at Vanderbilt, but Vanderbilt has a medical school
absolutely.
too, like a huge hospital. My cousin works there, and she was telling me that she is working nonstop, and it's not like she's going to work doing this overtime. And you know, a lot of times when you do overtime, you just sit there twiddling your thumb. She said no, like they just can't catch a break, don't get a break. And but you still have so many people in the community that don't trust the vaccine. And everybody, well, not everybody, but so many people know the some of the history of the Tuskegee experiment, and we have justifiable reason to be skeptical of the medical community. Even with my own father's illness this summer, I wonder what his outcome would have been. And I don't think that people are necessarily outwardly racist, but that's the thing about racism is, you know it. Like, would they be this dismissive if I weren't Black, or just the whole way that the system is set up? If my parents didn't have advocates, and many people in the Black community don't, like if we didn't have family members who were doctors and attorneys, that's what I'm saying. Not just loving family members who could pick up some slack, like cooking meals or doing the physical labor. But if we didn't have that, my daddy would have been dead. Like, he wouldn't have lasted as long as he did. And it's a real breakdown in the system. And COVID has revealed that breakdown.
Yep.
So we always knew that trickle-down economics didn't work. And now, so many of our safety networks just aren't there. So the work that you're doing is much needed to address some of these issues that are really, I don't know how you separate race from economics.
I don't think you can. Not in this country, you cannot. Anything that is built on a capitalist model, depends upon there being somebody who is the absolute underdog, somebody you have your foot on their neck. And so class is different from caste. But the bottom line is, in America, the strength of the capitalist system is to exploit and deny opportunity for some. And as we have begun to see, the number of the some is much greater than the number of those who own and have. And it's always been skewed to white male landowners. But when we think about the ways in which gentrification has unfolded in this iteration of gentrification, we would have called it redlining in previous events. But the bottom line is it's cyclic, and the cyclical nature of the ways in which oppression has happened requires us to revisit those issues that we get consciousness about. Ergo, the idea of revisiting the medical apartheid. I learned so much reading this book that I did not know about how medical science essentially exploited our bodies. But most recently, I don't know if you've seen this, but Johns Hopkins recently was, outed on having owned slaves or enslaved Africans, and to the tune of $7 million donated to the start of this conglomerate that we know of now, was, the tissue of a Black woman whose body was used and whose tissue was used to help establish this conglomerate, and to fight the issue of cervical cancer. But obviously,
Henrietta Lack.
exactly, and obviously never, ever, ever participated in any of the finance that has come to build what we know as this huge health conglomerate. So on every level, the issue of reparations is foremost in my mind, but more particularly, just the capacity to know and be informed in your decision making is a very, very important thing for us, because if you don't know who to trust, you can get really messed up.
Right. Which is okay, as a PWI, with private white institution, the majority of the leadership, like, and then you all, does Vanderbilt, the Divinity School, do you still have like a close relationship with the Methodist Church? Like here at ITC, we're unique in that we're interdenominational. So we have AME Seminary, Methodist Seminary, United Methodist Seminary, Baptist Seminary. With Vanderbilt as Methodist, are you all like, is this leadership, is it recommended for your white seminarians or everybody? Like, how does that work? Like, what is of course, the overall goal would be to address racism and or dismantle racism, but how do you accomplish that?
So that might actually be an overall goal, but ours is a grant funded program, and we're not so naive as to think we could do anything along the lines of dismantling racism in that period. We were funded for the first 3 years with $1 million grant from Luce, the Henry Luce Foundation. We've now been given another $500,000 to do another couple of years on that. But the program, and it is just a co-curricular program. It is not, a department. It is not a center, but it is an opportunity for the theological education to extend itself to a much more practical application. The Divinity School itself is non-denominational. It did have ties with the Methodist Church at one point in its iteration. We do have a Disciples Divinity House that is run by the Disciples of Christ, but we do not play to any particular denominational communion. And that's by intention, because public theology is not confined to a particular communion. You can be agnostic or atheist and still have faith in something. Sit down on a chair, you have faith, it'll hold you. The idea here is that you can utilize the things you believe in to help advance the cause of dismantling. And certainly we hope that, whatever we do, even if it's just to bring people into a level of consciousness, you do better because you know better, right?
That's how it sounds like I need to come to your leadership, because that is firmly what I believe. Like your everybody, number one, I'm a seminarian. I don't consider myself, like, I don't like the way as people, or as Dr. Toure would call it, spirit workers, refer to people as theologians, because everybody, no matter what they believe, is a theologian. And a theologian is your God talk, however you envision God. So I just believe that people need to be equipped with the knowledge to construct their own theology, to decide what your God talk will be. And I can see from the Leadership Institute how each of the programs that you offer are building blocks. They build upon each other. Yeah, that is just, I don't know. We're in a season. I tell people sometimes that Donald Trump did justice workers a favor. He did. I mean, and people get upset when I say that. It's like, what do you mean? He pulled back. It's like being in the Wizard of Oz, where the wizard is saying all that stuff, and Toto goes and pulls back the curtain.
Yeah,
He
that's
has
a good
pulled
analogy.
back the curtain. That curtain has been pulled back. So the emperor has no clothes. Like, they began this when Hillary Clinton first said that the Republican Party was dealing with a what did she call it? A basket of undesirables or something like that, and the press just nailed her. And when people would not call him racist, they have backed away. I mean, they have embraced it is what it is, call it what it is, stop being gentle, even down to the khaki tiki torch carriers. Like, we see you. So I see that the work you all are doing is so necessary. So how successful, and I don't know if successful is a good term, has your programming been, or what, like, envision for me what a participant in your workshop is able to do post Leadership Institute? Like, what kind of work are people doing?
So there are three things to keep in mind. First of all, the vision was to see what can we draw in the big net that would help us formulate a collaboration around the country of people who are like-minded in their thinking around public theology and racial justice. From the first year, we had maybe about 30 people who said, we're gonna come back. And in the second year, we had about another 30 folk who said, yeah, we wanna see this vision to its end. And so around 60 people continuously came, continuously participated, and became our collaborative partners. And they are located in various and sundry places across the nation. So now we have a national network of people that we can call upon who have been exposed to what we've taught, who have been socialized in our vision. And we were so fortunate when COVID shut down and protocols happened. Our work took on a different attitude, because the Luce Foundation saw our collaboration as a way to be philanthropic themselves, and they gave us $150,000 to distribute to our collaborative partners to help in various regions where they live. And that made a tremendous difference. We've done readings together, we've done book talks together, we've done community outreach together, and now the next phase will be to move into mobile institutes where we customize some of this teaching for their region. So for instance, if we've got folks in Chicago, we might just focus a little bit more deeply on some of the disparities in health equity. Or if we go to, for instance, Missouri or to Kentucky, we'll probably focus a lot of our attention on police brutality and the ways in which those kinds of things with the Breonna Taylor incident and many other things that have happened need to be drilled down on. But success for us is that we had people engaged. This medical apartheid sold 10,000 of the 12,000 tickets we had to various things that happened throughout those 3 days. So from the
Wow.
5th of August to the 7th of August, we had folks as many as 500, because we broadcast on Facebook as well as YouTube. And then, of course, if you got in, then you could also be in the actual webinar. But the attitude is about as much public-facing exposure as we can to the issues that we're raising, and then to keep connection. And what we really, really try to do is to privilege the idea of culture and arts, as you can see here, and also to privilege the work of students who are thinking about this and who really have an investment in this. And so we've been really blessed to be able to offer students $10,000 grants that they could work on at their leisure to advance their ideas of public theology and racial justice. And we've got PhD students who dealt with love and outrage, vision of movement and chaplaincy and social change. Carla McCanders, who taught in our 2019 institute, did a book, and she connected that book with the artwork of Omari Booker, who is an up and coming artist. We had a young man who has a JD who is, brilliant, to do work on protecting the church from attack. And you can see how relevant that is with Middle Church having been burned and so many other churches. Even my dear friend in DC, Reverend William Lamar, just had the Proud Boys come and take his Black Lives Matter sign and come on his property, tear it up, and then burn it on their property.
Yeah, that was sacrilegious to me. When we went to we're in 2020. Yeah, when we went to oh gosh, why can't I think of the name of the Proctor Conference? We went to that church, and just that's sacred ground to me. So, I mean, any church is sacred ground, but from a historical perspective, even if you're not a person of faith, for that to be the home of Frederick Douglass, that is intentional.
Yeah. But what excites me is that we have a student who was focused on that even before this all began, unfold in the public view. His public facing witness was about, what do we do to protect the church from this kind of attack? So that was what his project was about. He did phenomenal work on that. Had another student who was focused in on religion and race in the city and how gentrification is working. Youth entrepreneurship trainings. In other words, these students began to really dig deep into how does racial injustice show up, and then what do we need to expose to make it go away. This young man, Hunter Rhodes, did a deep dive in how enslaved Africans built, literally, because he's a carpenter. So he did a deep dive into how they contributed so much in terms of woodwork into the infrastructure of America. Just a phenomenal work. But that's the work that our students are doing. And and then finally, when we think in terms of speakers and people who participated in this work, we've had some of the most renowned scholars, scholar activists, be a part of our panels, our scholar roundtables regarding humanitarianism. You don't get better than Dr. Dorothy Roberts. Jonathan Metzl, whose book rose to meteoric light, Dying of Whiteness. I don't know if you know the book, but he was a panelist in this arena. Then we did interfaith. Then we did intergenerational dialogue. We looked at scholars around community engagement. I mean, just a panoply of things. But this particular scholarly panel dealt with a group of doctors who were able to make the connection between medical apartheid and the stolen breaths of George Floyd, and how those kinds of oppressions really do have some real import when it comes
Right.
to dealing with the issue of racial injustice. Because not only was George Floyd murdered, but he was absolutely not given any kind of medical attention, nor was his medical condition at any point important to the people who were administering his chokehold.
Right.
So that's the work, and I'm very, very proud of this work. I think
So,
that
excuse me, I'm sorry. With
Mhm.
the fellowship, how does one, like, when this round has already passed, correct? I remember looking at the deadline. I don't remember what the exact date was, but the application for this year has passed. Now that your funding has been extended for 3 years, do you do a round of cohorts every academic year, or is it how, basically I'm saying explain the program.
Sure. So no, the first grant will end at the end of December, and then we'll move into a new grant with new goals and intentions, and that is to mobilize what we've already collected and archived to regions where our collaborative partners exist. So I've assembled a team of 7 students, some who have already had a fellowship, but they did such great work that I want to work with them personally. Instead of them having individual projects now, we're all going to focus our attention on how to develop online courses that will be open access. And then they will help me really vision how to make these mobile institutes work, given the fact that we're all kind of right now still shut down and shut in.
Right.
Uh, the idea when we got the grant, and it's not 3, but we have 2 years on the second grant. The idea was to move around the country with our collaborative partners in place, and to, in other words, take the love to the location where they come from, as opposed to them coming to us. Now we're going to them and maybe gathering more people and really just duplicating our efforts, but then increasing the knowledge base of the places where our partners come from. Now that we are really relegated to a webinar or digital platform, those will probably be more webinar oriented until this pandemic recedes. But as long as we can and we have breath in our bodies, the idea is to do exactly that, even though it will be virtual.
So for my fellow seminarians, if they were to take, do avenues exist for seminarians to get credit for coursework by participating in these activities? Or that would be on an individual basis?
They did exist for that first 3 years, but now we're moving into a whole different phase. But what I am happy to advance is that one of our collaborative partners is now associate director of a public theology program herself at
Wow.
Wesley Theological Seminary. And so she's advancing and will be in a position to advance the very same work we were doing in the first 3 years in her program. And so look out for, they have a National Seminarians Capital experience where you can come spend the summer, get a real understanding of Capitol Hill, how it works. And so that will be a really, really great opportunity for seminarians. And then there's also an institute. They have a public theology institute there. So I would keep an eye out for what's happening at Wesley Theological Seminary.
Where
Because
is Wesley?
it's in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Because as you well know, with a new my soror as the vice president and a new regime with Joe Biden, this has the potential to be a very, very fruitful opportunity.
It's
To be in DC, to be in the mix of what's happening in government, and to really have a true voice that can not only speak truth to power, but speak truth in power.
I do think that it's an exciting time for spirit workers. Like, especially in public spaces, like
Mhm.
with that curtain being exposed, like
Mhm.
this is our opportunity to get out there, because there is no denying that
Mhm.
the system as it is currently operating is not working,
Right.
and is not sustainable.
Mhm.
And even as we move forward, a lot of people who like country in my uh I can see it, where companies are going to begin restructuring. Like this is going to be a reason why companies will restructure, because there's two ways to make money: increase profit or cut expenses. But
That's
in a
right.
capitalist system with no regulation or no cap on it, you're going to increase profit by any means necessary. So, in
Mhm.
all probability, that means that you're going to do both. So, to me, what that translates to is a lot of people won't get their jobs back.
Mhm.
Like if we can operate on a bare bone budget, we're gonna
Mhm.
continue operating on a bare bone budget. Wait a minute. If my company could succeed with people working at home and I
Mhm.
could cut the cost of paying for office space, I'm not going to reabsorb that cost. So what is that going to mean for the people who clean buildings, for the people who own like that's what's gonna have a trickle down effect. Even to people who like essential workers, like, okay, if I don't want to have to deal with people who get sick and can't come in and can't stock, they're going to do like Jeff Bezos. We're going to go to, we're already seeing it, where no touch contact. I don't have to worry about a machine getting sick and calling out to the same extent that I do a person. So I think that we're going to start feeling that. And in public spaces, how do we deal with that is going to be a real issue post pandemic. Post pandemic, what is our economy going to look like? And just as you describe capitalism, the least of these will be the most impacted.
That's right. Absolutely. You own it. You are on it.
Yeah. Um, it I don't know. I just think ain't nothing new under the sun, right?
Uh-huh.
Like when you look at, and I'm going way, way back, the fall of Rome, there are parallels.
No doubt.
And there was actually I was just reading that I'm trying to think of what this guy's PhD was. He was an ethnologist. He looked at numbers. He tracked numbers and movements and waves. And what he said we were due, his research pointed to, we were due to for a big shift or an uprising. Um, and he tracked it according to the number of people who are educated.
Mhm.
And when you have so many people being educated, competing for jobs that no longer exist, an uprising happens before it settles out and the system recreates itself. And I really think when you look at Proud Boys or all of those people, that's what that is. It's like this wave of nationalism, not just in the States, but across the world.
Mhm.
That's that power shift. Like, wait a minute. The have nots got to say the have nots. Y'all can't become the haves, because then we have to compete with you. But the thing that always kills me is that capitalism is a construct. It's not a concrete thing, right? Money is, even the valuation of money is a construct. is not a concrete thing, right? Like 1 + 1 = 2. That's concrete. Economics is a philosophy. How we value something, that's a philosophy. I'm telling you, I'm so excited that I spoke to you, because I think I found a place for me. Or when I say a place, I'm like, wow. Even to go back and read some of the books that you highlighted, it's just fascinating.
I'm
It's
glad.
just fascinating. So kudos on the work that you are doing, and everything that we've talked about is on the Vanderbilt website. Like if you go to vanderbilt.com, and can you tell people how to get, because I saw the list of resources as well. So can you tell people how to get in touch with you, or if you have a mailing list or...
Sure. On the website, if you go to publictheologyracialjustice.org, there is a way to contact us. But feel free to also send me an email, teresa.l.smallwood@vanderbilt.edu. I try to remain very open, but if you also just participate in the contact us piece, we try to get back to people.
Yes. So do you guys have a catalog of upcoming events, or a newsletter that we can sign up for?
I don't have a newsletter at the present moment. All of my time is given to trying to close out one grant and move into the vision of the new one. But we had, a lot of blogging that went on in the beginning, and that kind of fell by the wayside. My hope is that these 7 students who have been chosen will really, really, really dig in and try to establish. We're hoping to establish a regular podcast. It may or may not happen on a weekly basis. It might just be monthly or maybe bi-monthly to start with, but we're talking to a media specialist now about how we can establish that, and from there you'll probably be given lots of knowledge about where our next mobile institute will happen, what will be the focus. And because it'll be virtual for at least the first 6 months, anybody can come and be a part. And so we
Right.
hope that all of our siblings in Georgia will come and be a part. Hope that all of our siblings at ITC will remain engaged with us, because the more the merrier, the better we have a true picture of things when there are more perspectives brought to the table.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Smallwood, thank you so much for your time. This has been a very inspiring conversation for me. So I really do appreciate it. And there's so I'm telling you guys, if you're in this space, and take a look at the workshops that they're offering, and go ahead and contact Dr. Smallwood, because you guys have had some really great workshops and speakers and resources. So I'm going to get my husband just came in the room. He just left, and I've been killing myself. Like, what can I get this man for Christmas? What can I get this man for Christmas? You gave me a wonderful reading list, because he follows this. He's a Morehouse grad, so he's always on their little feed, like in these debates. And I'll see him. He's one of those like ferocious Facebook debaters looking up facts, and they don't understand this. And he was just talking about people. I told you how I came into this conversation talking about the disinformation about the COVID vaccine, and they don't understand. They've been studying this, and there was a breakthrough. So I'm gonna give him that book. Look, I'm gonna help him with his arsenal. So if y'all don't do anything else, look at that list of resources for your own personal library. And then for Women's Month, Women's History Month is March. And I'm speaking to Cal State Dominguez Ollie program. So I'm definitely going to look at your list of resources, because I've, trying to narrow down racial like there's so many ways you could go, but trying to narrow down that work to a topic can be challenging. So that list of resources will be very helpful.
I'm glad.
So thank you so much. And I
You're
don't want to take any more of your time, but you'll definitely be hearing from me. I do hope that we can keep in touch, because the work that you are doing is so necessary and so exciting. So again, thank you. I think we accomplished that A for this.
Okay, Miss Hayward. Have a
Yeah.
great afternoon, okay?
Yes, thank you so much.
All right.
You have a good holiday.
You too.